Yoda's cloak, and now I'm ready to finish. Again, this is a running stitch. This is kind of what it should look like. So what I'm going to do, if you remember, I started here at the corner. I'm going to try and find the stitch that's there and insert the needle through that stitch. Remember, the stitch is between the felt, and I'm just going to pull my needle through there, and that's going to secure it. And then what I'll do is I will just go ahead and cut to make a nice clean edge there as much as possible. Okay, so then my next step and my finishing step is to get my green thread again, and it's fine that it's just a single layer. I just, like I said, it doesn't really need to show even, so I'm going to take the single layer and I'm going to double it over, bring the ends to meet at the end, wrap it around the needle to tie the knot at the end. And then what we're going to do is we're going to place the top to the back, and we're going to stitch the top and the sides of Yoda's head together. And we're not going to stitch the bottom of Yoda's head together, because what's going to happen is we're going to insert his cloak into here, and we will hand stitch the front, and then we'll flip it over and we'll hand stitch the back. All right, so get an idea of where the cloak is going to go, and then kind of start off to the side by stitching the front and the back of Yoda's head together. Again, we're going to do this kind of sandwich between the layers. So just do the first stitch just through the top layer, so that the knot sits in between the two layers of Yoda's face. You don't see it. And then go ahead with your running stitch, just like you did the cloak, until you get all the way around. And again, it's so important that you cut accurately, so that what you're capturing in the front is also what you're capturing in the back. And the ends are going to be the ends of his ears are going to be a little bit tricky. It's going to be important that you don't really pull tight at the ends of his ears, because you don't want to squish the ends of his ears. Does that make sense? You don't want to squish them up. You want them to be pointy. You want them to look Yoda-like. He's like an elf, right? Looks like an elf anyway. So does it keep on going around? See how if I pull too tight, it crinkles his ears. So every once in a while, I just have to reshape his ears. So down through both layers, back up. Down through both layers and back up. It's nice, the running stitch is pretty fast once you get going and once you kind of get a rhythm. Oops, got a little knot there. Sometimes that happens, and you just kind of have to try to work the knots out. You don't want to get too excited about a knot, because you can make it worse if you're not careful. Again, being careful at the points. And then we're coming around the last bend here, and keeping in mind that we're not sewing up the bottom edge, because we're going to insert the cloak. What is here? And that's probably going to be about it. Okay, so then we're going to insert the cloak into the opening at the bottom of Yoda's head. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going around, but now I'm just going to capture the front of Yoda's head and the front of the cloak. And then we're going to do the same thing Now it's a little bit thicker, honestly, because we've got a couple layers here. Okay, so just a running stitch, just trying to capture the very top of his cloak and the top of his head. And these needles are kind of thick. I may have to use a little bit of force there. There we go. Okay, so now the front is secure. Now we're going to shoot the needle through to the back. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing across the back. We're just going to capture the back of Yoda's head and the back of the cloak with the running stitch as best as we can. Just capture those two layers. And I'm just kind of leaning my needle, kind of pushing my needle up against a piece of cardboard if I need help, because it doesn't always go through real easily. These needles are pretty thick on the end, like the eye is and the stem are, just because it makes it easier for you guys to thread. Okay, so now we're finished, and what I'm going to do is we're going to tie it off. So we're just going to kind of go through the felt here. Okay, at the end, creating this loop again. Let's talk about this loop. And with the loop, you're going to put the needle through the loop and pull, and that's going to create a nice little knot. And we'll cut as close to the knot as possible. And I think I will, for the sake of making this look nice, I'll use the green string to make a hanger. So I'm just going to insert through, let's see. You can use any color string that you want, but I'm going to go ahead and create the knot. I'm going to use green because that's what's already on my needle. I'm going to insert through the top of Yoda's skull here and bring it up through. And then make a loop as long as I want. Whoops. Try that again. Okay, I'm going to make a loop. And go back through again. So that's about how long I want my loop. So I'm going to go ahead to the back, and I'm going to go ahead and insert my needle through the felt or through a stitch, whatever you want to do. And make sure my loop stays the length that I want it. And let me see, is my loop too long? And then we'll tie it off on the back. Oops. Sorry about that, my knot came through the back. Okay, go ahead and tie it. Lots of strings around here. By inserting the needle into the loop that I've created and pull, and then I have myself a knot. And go ahead and trim it. And there we go. Now I have a loop at the top of Yoda's head. And I have my finished Yoda. Trim off any stray threads that I see. And now I've got my Leia, my Yoda, and my Vader. Okay, there we go.